Hello, this is Barry Chase, senior partner at ChaseLawyers, and today I'm going to be talking to you about modeling, and I'm talking to you from my kitchen in Miami Beach rather than my office. My kitchen is a place where my wife, fortunately, is the person who usually does cooking, and I'm not going to cook for you today, but I am going to talk to you about modeling as a business. The first thing you need to understand about your modeling business is that it is going to be a business. And the question becomes, what kind of a business is it? Are you an employee of the agency? And the answer is no, in almost all cases. Rather, you're an independent contractor. Now, the difference is, if you've been an employee of a company and you've received a W-2, you know that you got a regular salary, you know that you had certain benefits from the company, you had certain number of vacation days that you could take over the year, etc. In an independent contractor relationship, you are one entity and the agency is another, and each of you has your own independent business. So let's explore what that really means in real life. Now, in your modeling relationship, you're going to be an independent contractor and the agency is going to be an independent business that isn't quite your employer. The disadvantages of being an independent contractor, which is what you'll be under virtually any modeling agreement, is that you don't have a regular salary to lean on. You don't have withholding of things like your taxes. You have to take care of that kind of thing yourself because it's going to be your own business. And you're not going to get benefits like health insurance and certain holidays off and things like that. The advantages, however, of being an independent contractor are also significant. For one thing, you don't have those regular work hours in a regular workplace. You're much freer to develop your business as it seems you should develop it. For the other advantage, you don't really have a boss, quote unquote. You've got someone who will be your agent. You've got someone who will be setting up your modeling commitments, but you don't have really a boss as such. So exactly what is the agency's role in this independent contractor relationship? Well, they're a sort of a clearinghouse where they have clients who need models for various gigs, to push a product, to push a service, just to be a nice looking presence on set, where an ad agency wants to make an ad for their client, which may be a product manufacturer. And the agency has got to decide, well, which one of the models in our stable will be best for this particular product or service. It may be that it's you hope it's you, because the agency will then arrange for a shoot that they will send you to. They will give you the information, and you will go to the shoot and perform your model services at the shoot. Now, it's important to stop at this point before we get into the nature of the contract you may have with the agency, to talk about how you select the agency or how you evaluate an agency that may come to you. Now, we've all heard the stories about abuse of models, financially and otherwise, where they're not paid well. And sometimes there are even abuses in terms of sexually predatory behavior. And we have to face those things. So you have to choose carefully and do some due diligence about deciding to enter into a relationship with an agency. You can check their website to see whether that looks professionally maintained. You can certainly try to talk to some of the models that are featured on their website to see, first of all, whether they really are under contract to that agency. And secondly, what their treatment has been like. Have they received their payment on time? Have they felt uncomfortable in the relationship with their manager, whether that's financially or otherwise? Has the agency sent them on the kind of shoots that they would like to be sent on, or have there been surprises once you get to the location where you're actually on camera? If you get the wrong answers to those questions, you should probably not enter into the agreement, even though you're eager, as is understandable, to become a model. Anybody would like to live this way. But you have to be careful about the people you are actually beginning to work with. One of the things that I've often said to, to my aspiring model clients is that if after talking to the people you're going to be working with, you feel as if you've got to take a shower, you've somehow been sullied, then I wouldn't work with them. I would advise my clients always to back away from something like that. The relationship was not going to get better. It'll get worse and slimier. So if you feel on the first set of discussions that these aren't people that you really want to be associated with, run the other way. So let's talk about some of the major provisions in a modeling agreement that you may be offered. First of all, what is the revenue split going to be? Let's assume that you go to a shoot. You've been sent there by your agency. They're going to pay $1,000 for that. Who gets what out of that $1,000? Well, the standard in this industry, which is very difficult to negotiate your way out of unless and until you become a household name in the industry. The standard in the industry is it's 80% for you, which is good news for you, and 20% for the agency. Now, there is a hidden additional 20% for the agency in what they generally call a service fee. So that if you're getting $1,000 for that day, which by the way is not at all out of the question, even for an early model. If you're getting $1,000 for that day, you're getting your 800, they get their 200, but they're also going to get typically another 200 as what they call a service fee for their sending a model to this shoot. So they're ending up with 400, you're ending up with 800. Everybody's pretty happy. And there's no real reason to negotiate or to try to negotiate that. Two reasons why you shouldn't do that. For one thing, it's almost never changeable. And it will look silly. You will appear to be a sort of amateur if you try to move that up to like 85% or 90%. Again, as a new model, as a non-household name model. The second reason not to propose or not to fight over the 80-20 split is that it will set you up as someone who's difficult. Not only do you not sort of know the industry, which is excusable if you're new, but it will set you up as someone who's rather difficult, and depending on the nature of the discussions that go on about the 80-20 split or whatever you're after, it may leave a bad taste in someone's mouth. So it's better not to approach this as a negotiating point. It's what is, it is standard. And for a new model, it's probably the best you're going to do. Now, the next question is, well, how long does this first contract work? Since the first contract will have you as a completely new model, it probably is going to be the worst one you're ever going to sign, assuming that you're successful during the period of this first contract. That period is likely to be 3 years. And there will be a renewal clause somewhere in the contract that says sometime before the end of the 3 years, perhaps 90 days before the end, you have to tell them if you don't want to renew. Otherwise, it will automatically renew, and you'll be tied to that agency for another year, 2 years, 3 years, usually 2 years at least, maybe 3. So you want to know where you are in that 3-year, we call it a term. It's basically how long does this relationship last? So typically it will be an 80-20 split, and typically it will be 3 years. Now, what happens if, let's say, in the second year of this 3-year term that your contract specifies, things just aren't going well? You're not being sent out on shoots. The ones you're being sent to are not desirable from your point of view. They don't show you off in the best possible way. They may even be objectionable for one reason or another. And the agency may have become disillusioned with you. Now, what do you do about that? Must you hang around for the next 18 months after discovering this lack of progress in the first 18 months? If possible, we want to negotiate an out clause for you, an early out clause, where unless your revenue has reached some modest amount by some certain date, you can then get out of the agreement if you decide to do that and go back onto the market. So if we can, we're going to negotiate for you to be able to come out if your revenue hasn't reached a modest level or there are some other problems in the relationship. Usually it's revenue based because that's an objective measure. So if you've made $500 up to that point, you certainly want to get out, and we will try to negotiate that for you. Now, this sounds somewhat mysterious, this step down provision, and it sounds even a little bit negative because it's got the word down. But in fact, it's a terrific kind of clause if you're in a position to negotiate one. And let me talk a little bit about for example, the 80-20 split that we talked about earlier. That is standard. Very few models are in a position to negotiate something better than the 80-20, as I mentioned earlier. But if you're being very successful in your first agreement, as a model has that I'm representing currently, you can negotiate a new contract. Usually you can't do this in the middle of your first, but if you're successful enough, you can even do that. If you find that you're starting to get 30,000 a day day rates, and your clients are happy to pay that, you can add that up and see that, even in 100 days, you're going to be at the $3 million level. That's a very successful career that you're creating for yourself. But in the meantime, you're still paying the agency its 20%. They're also getting their service fee. So what is a step down clause that you could negotiate for your second agreement, or possibly, as I say, even in the midst of your first agreement? What it is, it says things like, well, up to $1 million, it'll be this 80-20 thing where you get 200,000 out of my first million agency. But between 1 million and 2 million, we're going to step that down. We're going to step it down to a 15% for the agency, so that my next million, I'm getting 850,000, and the agency is getting 150,000. And if you're really successful, you can even get a step down for the third million, so that for the first million, it's 80-20. For the second million, it's 85-15. And for the third million, it's 90-10. The agency is still getting 100,000 out of that million. And of course, some models make a lot more than that. I'm sure you've read these things if you're interested in the industry. Not many, but if you're one of those who's making millions for the agency, you should think in terms of trying to negotiate a step down clause so that 20% that the agency is always taking of what you're earning for them can be reduced when you're making lots of money. Some of you may have developed your own businesses even prior to being presented with a modeling agreement or looking to become a model. If, for example, you are an influencer on social media for fitness purposes, you might want to preserve that and carve that out of the agreement. The agreement itself will have you as an exclusive model for the agency, and it will specify those areas in which you can only work with this agency and with no one else. But if you've got this pre-existing business, there's an opportunity to try to carve that out and permit yourself to continue doing that, because after all, modeling, like so many things in the entertainment field, is a little bit sort of hard to gauge. You could have everything going for you, but it's a fickle business. And unless the time is right for your look, quote unquote, for your body shape and all that, you may not be successful in the modeling field right away. So you want to preserve your revenue streams in pre-existing non-modeling careers that you may have. And we advise that you do that. Now, if you're an aspiring model, you're looking to get the attention of agencies, the answer to this question of whether you have to pay for your portfolio is going to be yes, almost certainly. You're just trying to start out your independent contractor business, And one of the expenses you're going to have is going to a professional photographer for a series of headshots so that an agency that you do approach can see what your face looks like, what color your hair is, what your hair looks like, and also can see full-length shots, which the photographer will take in various kinds of clothing. You may look better in one kind than in another, but you want to give the agency a variety of looks as to how your body looks in various kinds of attire. That's going to be your original portfolio. And that's what you're going to send digitally to agencies to see if they have interest in meeting you, in which case you're going to have to fly to their location and have a personal interview with them. They want to make sure that you're someone that is presentable in person as well. The agency may, whether at the beginning of your relationship with them, if they're going to sign you, or during your first contract, may actually want to send you to their photographer for a new portfolio, in which case you have a negotiating opportunity to see who's going to pay for that. That's going to be a 4-figure kind of expenditure, and you may well get your agency to do it if they've already seen enough potential in you to make it worth their while, even though they feel you need a new portfolio. So it is something you can negotiate over, but you must be prepared. Part of your independent contractor responsibility is to present the agency that you're looking to hook up with a set of shots that you can send them that they can evaluate. Now, while we're discussing expenses for your portfolio, you should be aware that because you're an independent contractor, you're going to have to lay out the money for virtually all your expenses. The agency will set you up with, let's say, a shoot in Los Angeles. How do you get there? Well, you're going to have to front the money for the travel, for your food while you're out there, except to the extent that it's in the studio while you're doing the shoot. You're going to have to pay for a hotel, or you could stay with a friend, I suppose. But the point is that your expenses are going to be yours. You're an independent contractor, and the agency is not going to pay your expenses. It may offer you an advance against those expenses because you don't have the resources independently to do that as you're starting out. But if they do give you an advance, it's an advance against your receipts. So that will be taken back out by the agency when you eventually get what remains, your 80%, will become something lower because of the costs you've had to pay. So again, one of the disadvantages of being an independent contractor, though you have no choice in this, is that you have to lay out the money for your own expenses. The agency will take care of you in other ways. It may guide you to a hotel that they know is good in Los Angeles and where you can get reasonable rates, but you're going to have to pay the expenses in the first instance. Now remember, it's the agency's job to set up these modeling shoots, to set up these appointments for you. You can turn them down rarely if you have a very good reason. If you get to be known as someone in the agency who's not following up on the agency's arrangements, that's not going to be a good thing for you, obviously. Remember that you're an independent contractor. They do care about you as a person, but they care about you as part of their modeling inventory, first and foremost. It's a business. You're a business, and the agency's a business. So they will want to schedule you for modeling shoots really pretty much as heavily as they feel you can deal with it. One of the problems that some models run into, and which we try to avoid by negotiating clauses in the contract, is the famous red-eye flight in Los Angeles after doing a gig out there where you've got to show up in New York at 8 o'clock and look perky and bright and beautiful. This happens regularly to models. Even worse if it's back and forth to Europe, where there's very little, if any, time in between your appointments. We try in our negotiating with the agencies to get them to pay due regard to this kind of thing. Again, they're unlikely to turn down a very lucrative shoot for you, and you may not want them to because it is, after all, very lucrative. If it's a $100,000 shoot, which very few models can command, but even if it's a $10,000 shoot, that's $8,000 for you, and less your expenses. And you may not want to pass that up just because you're likely to be tired and a little drained when you get to the location of the shoot. So recall that you're doing your own expenses, but also be aware that the agency's interest will be to set up almost constant appointments for you if they can do so, because that means you're making constant revenue for yourself and the agency. Now, something that may be of special concern to you if you're a parent of a model, certainly, and if you're a model, you're talking about an industry that is famously sort of a fast life, which is very appealing. The parties can be very glamorous. The people you'll meet can be extremely interesting. Some of them will be, let's say, fakers, but you'll also meet some very interesting people, and you'll have a very glamorous seeming life. That may be more from the outside. The glamour is usually more from the outside in a business than it is from the inside. There is no glamour, for example, in what we talked about previously, having to fly back from Los Angeles on an 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock flight there and show up, land in New York at 6 o'clock and show up for a New York shoot at 8 o'clock. Same if you're coming back to Miami, where one of our offices is. So while it may be glamorous from the outside, it's not so glamorous from the inside, but it is a very sort of fast life. And one of the things that certainly parents are concerned about, and you may be as well, is whether you will know when you've been signed up for a shoot that may require you to appear nude, semi-nude, or in some way where you don't really want to comply. You should at least know about those things. The agency should know that they've got to notify you if they're sending you out to one of those kinds of shoots, because you may refuse to do that. You may want to talk to the photographer about doing something that's not embarrassing for you rather than what you may have been signed up for, but you need to know from the agency what is going to be expected of you when you arrive. There's also the possibility of some physical danger in some of these shoots, things where you have to do something athletic. It may be something that just doesn't accord with your nature. It may be something that violates your fear of heights, for example. You need to know about those kinds of commitments that the agency is making for you if there is physical danger involved. And you need to make a judgment on your own as to whether it's worth it for you to show up and take that risk. So these are, again, things like nudity and physical danger, or perhaps having to eat something that is not on your normal diet. You need to know about those things beforehand. And then we can negotiate a clause in the contract, which means you will know about those things. Now, for those of you who want more detail about the matter of getting into the modeling business than I can give you in this Zoom, you might want to access my book on how to launch your modeling career, which has more detail, and you can access it at the link below. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which you're on right now, and just by subscribing, you'll be alerted to new content that may come your way. And then finally, if you've got a specific situation where you're talking to an agency already, or where you have hit a snag in your preparations before you send your portfolio to agencies, feel free to give us a call. It's a free call for the first 15 or 20 minutes. You can call us at ChaseLawyers. We'll be happy to talk to you. It's 305-373-7665. And as I say, we can give you detail then. We can give you some specific advice and counsel on what your next step should be. And we'll be happy to hear from you at that time. Until then, so long. So if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button below and let us know.
Also, you can subscribe to the Chase Lawyers YouTube channel for more legal tips for those in the entertainment industry like yourself. And if you have other topics you want us to cover, please let us know in your comments below so that we can help you out in that way too. See you soon.